Hey, welcome to Choo. My name is Jacob and I live on about an acre here in the Adelaide Hills in sunny South Australia. And although I'm in the centre of a town more or less, we're still completely surrounded by an absolute ton of nature. And in fact, on my property I have a spring-fed creek. This town is built on top of an aquifer which runs all year round. So needless to say, there are tons of animals in my backyard, including a myriad array of gorgeous birds, rodents, foxes. We had a rabbit, he didn't last long because of the foxes, and of course, snakes. Oh, and this old drunk guy at the pub said that there's a werewolf in town, but werewolves aren't real, or maybe they are. Anyway, I'm yet to see a werewolf, but I'll keep my eyes peeled. So about 2 months ago, I saw 3 eastern brown snakes in my fucking driveway. And most Australians would know this, but for those of you who ain't from around here, the eastern brown snake is the second most venomous terrestrial snake on Earth. Meaning it lives on land, and if it bites you, it will fuck up your day and, your life, potentially. The eastern brown snake is responsible for the majority of death via snake bites in Australia.
And their homeland is right here. And this is my backyard. This is ground zero. This is where they've always been, long before I came along. So what am I gonna do? What are you gonna do?
Its bite can cause a myriad array of horrible things, including something known as coagulopathy. I am definitely mispronouncing that word, and basically what that means is you can't stop bleeding. It can also cause hypertension, it can cause thrombotic microcraniopathy. I can't say these words. I'll put them all up, obviously. This is basically clotting in your capillaries. And so, in other words, it kind of clots your blood and you can't stop bleeding, which is somewhat oxymoronic, but hey, that's brown snakes for you. What this means is you are going to end up having kidney failure, potential seizures, vision loss. The venom from brown snakes also causes intracranial hemorrhaging. In other words, your brain fucking bleeds, and you're probably going to have a heart attack if you don't get treated soon. Basically, your whole body just shits itself. And the worst part is, if you don't get treatment, via anti-venom pretty fucking quickly, there have been reports of people having amputations because the venom causes necrosis, and when too much damage is done, it's irreparable. In other words, the only way to sort of treat that is to lob off your arm. There's also long-term health problems, like I said, kidney failure and stuff that can happen if you're not treated. I mean, they literally cause your flesh to rot off in some cases, which is pretty metal, but also really fucking horrible. You don't want to get bit by one of these things, okay? And get this, 2 days from the time of recording, I found a giant red-bellied black snake just cruising along in front of my patio. In fact,
Pretty sure he's still under here somewhere because I can hear something fucking scuffling around.
now red bellies are nowhere near as deadly as brown snakes, but they will still attack you and they can cause some serious damage. They will probably kill your dogs and your dogs might chase after them. They will attack if they are threatened, i.e. if you step on them or if they're backed into a corner, but they're not as aggressive as brown snakes, so they're most likely to piss off, but you never know. So I got them kicking around here too. Also, this idiot, Booty! 2 years or so ago, about a year ago, she got bitten by a snake, and it cost $2,000 to have her treated, which really sucked. As much as I love this little bitch, $2,000 is a lot of money. I could have done my carpets for that. I'm trying to rip up these carpets, but it's going to cost me a fair bit of money to put something else down. Instead, I had to fix my dog, whom I love, so it was worth it. It would have been better had she not been bit in the first place, but the point I'm trying to make is these snakes are all over my yard, and they're really fucking deadly. And these morons, despite being cute as shit, don't have the sense to leave snakes alone. So with all the red hot snake action going on around here, I decided to do some research to see if I could find any way to deter snakes from entering my property and to bust some myths while we're at it. I'm wanting to bust myths, and there are a lot of snake myths around in terms of prevention. So we're going to first talk about some myths, then talk about some possible solutions. But spoiler alert, there's not that much you can do, but there kind of is, but there kind of isn't. So stick around. Now I've been living in snake country, here in the Adelaide Hills for about 6 years now, so I'm going to draw on my own experience, plus I'm going to be citing a whole bunch of peer-reviewed, credited scientific literature as well that will be linked in the description. So this is not just my opinion, this is the research that I have done based on other people's research and my own lived experience. So number one, if you have a black snake in your garden or in your yard, it will keep away the brown snakes. Black snakes, as we discussed, are less deadly than brown snakes, so it's a lesser of two evils. This is a good thing, right? Except there's very little evidence to suggest that black snakes will keep away brown snakes. As I mentioned, I've got a whole bunch of brown snakes over this side of the house, and I've got a big black snake out the front of my house, and there's not really any scientific literature to back this up. I'm not alone in this thought. Now, it is true that black snakes will, upon occasion, eat brown snakes, so I guess you could say that they might remove brown snakes sometimes by eating them, but they're not necessarily going to. They're not going to scare them away per se. The snakes might just keep to themselves or keep to their own respective areas in the yard. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I've got those brown snakes are still kicking around because I can hear something rustling over here, and I definitely saw that black snake 2 days ago and about a week or so before that. So, no, black snakes do not get rid of brown snakes per se. On that note, number 2, lizards will keep away brown snakes. Or any snakes. For example, people say blue tongues do. That's not true at all. The most common one though, people will say shinglebacks will keep away brown snakes. This is not true. I've got lizards here, I've got shinglebacks, I got snakes. This is absolutely inaccurate, and the scientific evidence, well, there's none. So, likewise, brown snakes eat blue tongues. But blue tongues also eat brown snakes. They eat each other. So big snakes eat little lizards, and big lizards eat little snakes. They coexist. So just because there's a definitely if there's a blue tongue, that's nothing, but the main myth is shinglebacks. This is not true. There is absolutely no evidence to support this. Shinglebacks will occasionally feed on baby snakes, apparently, but this is extremely uncommon behavior, and it's only been documented in very rare occasions. They don't chase them off. So that is another big myth that you hear all the time. Get a whole bunch of lizards, fill your fucking yard up with them, and you won't have any snakes. This is absolute bullshit. So black snakes do not keep away brown snakes. Shingleback lizards do not keep away snakes. This is an old wives' tale, so don't believe it. I'm not really sure why they call it an old wives' tale. I think that's a bit antiquated and misogynistic, as honestly I've only ever heard men say this, but that myth is exactly that, a myth. Loud noises. Okay, so everybody in Australia has the idea that when you're out foraging, if you're out bushwalking, of which I do a lot of, if you've seen any of my other videos, you know I'm always in the woods, making loud noise, stomping around like a Clydesdale, alerts the snakes to your presence, and they would much rather flee than fight, and if you're out in the bush, they've got plenty of areas in which they can flee, and you're less likely to get bit. This is mostly true when you're out bush. So when you're out mucking around and the snakes have somewhere to flee, they probably will. It's very rare, unless you happen upon them and they're startled. Even then, I've happened upon heaps of red-bellied black snakes on site when I used to chop firewood, or even around here, as I mentioned, and they run away as soon as they can. And I've also had a whole bunch of brown snakes nick off as well, but they are a little bit more aggressive and they might strike. Sometimes black snakes will attack when they're competing for a mate. If you happen upon a big snake fight, they might turn and go you because they're like all pumped up, right? But it's very, very rare. However, if you know me, and some of you don't, I am a massive metal geek, as in the genre of music. I love heavy metal, and I mostly work from home, which means I am absolutely pumping out death metal at an extremely unhealthy volume, much to the dismay of my neighbors and dogs and everything else. Almost every day, my car is cranking out music. My house is pumping out music. I pump out music into the garden, and it's loud, heavy, deep, bassy, sonorous music, and there's fucking snakes everywhere. So I'm not sure. I would have assumed that just having all that music would be enough to deter the snakes. Now, it might spook them off a little bit, but they don't flee very far, and they don't stay away for very long. So having loud music in my house, I would have assumed that would have done the job. It does not. So loud noises might deter snakes when you're out and about. It might spook them into hiding, but it's not going to remove them from your property. I can speak for 5 years of absolute insane technical death metal being pumped out of my house. In fact, when those brown snakes ended up under my trash pile, which we'll talk about trash pile in a minute, I got a massive subwoofer, put that down on top of the pile. I got some netting and I netted it all off, hoping to sort of catch them, and I cranked up this death metal, like some of the most extreme, brutal death metal you ever heard, and I left that on there for about 6 hours. That would have really pissed off my neighbors. But I stood around for about half an hour and watched. Then I checked the nets. Nothing. The snakes did not flee, at least not within that first 30 minutes. I just sat there drinking beer, just staring at this pile of trash with death metal blasting, and they didn't fuck off. So I'm not really sure. There's this misconception about loud noises spooking snakes. It kind of does. but it doesn't get them out of your fucking home, I can tell you that much for free. This brings me to my next point. There are certain contraptions, mechanisms, whatever you want to call it, little fucking bullshit, I guess you'd call them snake oil, snake deterrents, and that you can buy from hardware stores and whatnot. These little stakes you put in the ground and they create vibrations which allegedly spooks the snakes off. Do not waste your money on these things. They do not work. They have been proven not to work. I'll add some links and you can follow them, including one study where this lady, who's a professional snake expert and handler, found the snakes coiled up around these things while they were activated. So if these things are supposed to deter snakes, why are the snakes wrapped around them? Honestly, they do not work at all. So do not waste your money on this gimmick. It will not get rid of snakes. If my subwoofer with technical death metal just belting out for the last 5 years doesn't get rid of a snake, what's this little thing in the ground that vibrates with less intensity than a dildo gonna do? Fuck all. Same goes for the so-called scent deterrents. So there's a lot of different information online and on forums, again, old wives' tales, where certain vinegars, clove oil, a mixture of that with chili and garlic and sometimes ammonia and all this sort of stuff, if you spray them around the entrances of your house or around your property or in snaky areas, this is an irritant to the snake and the snake passing over will be deterred by the scent and leave the area. Again, there is some research being done on this, but the studies seem to be leaning towards the fact that they don't work at all. In fact, one study showed a snake going over the top of a very heavily liquefied area that some guy covered it with ammonia and all this other so-called deterrents, and the snake just cruised over the top like it was nothing and just hung out there. So there is some university research being done into potential sprays and things that will deter snakes, but as yet, it's inconclusive, to say the least, and nothing that they have done so far seems to work. So don't waste your time doing that because it probably doesn't work. In fact, it does the opposite. It probably causes more harm than good. For one, if you're in your garden and you're covering everything with vinegar and highly acidic stuff, you're going to kill your plants, okay? Plants don't like extremely high acid. It's also a waste of money, and it will give you, or could give you, a false sense of security. So instead of taking actual precautions, you're just sitting there spraying fucking vinegar around the house. You might not see a snake. Okay, survivorship bias is a real thing. You might walk outside, the snake hears you coming and nicks off under the patio, or you might not even have snakes to begin with, or the snake you saw that freaked you out enough to go and make this weird vinegar concoction was just passing through. But it doesn't work, so don't waste your time, don't waste your money, and be safe, okay? So you might be thinking to yourself, Jacob, you've got a massive dick, but how do I keep away snakes? And you're right on the first point there. There's not much you can do. The number one thing you can do to decrease the chances of snakes settling into your property. You're never going to get rid of them necessarily by when they pass through, especially young hatchlings. They will fight for territory and then nick off. So some of them could simply be passing through your property. But the number one thing is habitat loss, which sounds kind of shitty because it kind of is. But more specifically, you want your place, your yard, to be as undesirable for snakes as possible. So I'm not talking about spraying sprays because that doesn't work. I'm not talking about loud noises because that clearly doesn't work. I'm talking about getting rid of any rubble, like sheets of tin that they can't nest under, removing water sources. So if you've got some sort of pond or something in your backyard and you're really paranoid, you could remove that. Obviously, I can't get rid of my creek or the aquifer that I'm situated on. You know, I wouldn't want to anyway. I'll take the risk of the snakes that have that gorgeous creek in my backyard. I couldn't get rid of it if I wanted to. I can't get rid of the rubble, which is why I do have this big trash pile because I am cleaning up at the moment. Keeping the grass nice and short because snakes like to nest in grass. Also, long grass and rubble provides a habitat for what snakes like to predate on, i.e. small rodents and whatnot, right? Other lizards and things. So clean up your yard, you're going to have less snakes. Okay, you can, if you're in an urban environment, clearing around your house, it's going to keep them maybe further away. They might be behind the shed or something, but they're not going to be at your doorstep if there's nowhere for them to hang out. Removing food sources. Okay, so if you've got a compost that's not very well taken care of, it might end up attracting a whole bunch of rodents. Snakes love rodents. See, human beings attract rodents. Rodents attract snakes. If you got rats, you're likely to have snakes, especially in the country. Get rid of that food source, get rid of the rodents, get rid of the snakes. I mean, it might not really. I have a compost that's very well kept. Nothing gets in there, but I still got snakes. So there's not really that much you can do. Remove your rubble, remove your water sources, try to keep your compost nice, get rid of your rodents, get rid of your long grass, get rid of your wood piles, and you will decrease the nesting areas for snakes and places where they can hang out, but you're not necessarily going to get rid of them. It's my house. There's so much fucking shit. This is a really old house. I've got so much shit everywhere. I'm on stilts, so I'm working on some kind of netting thing to go around my house, but it's a big job, and I might not stop them from getting under my house anyway. They might dig in or fly in or teleport in. I don't know how snakes work. So yeah, it's really sort of difficult to stay on top of this. How do you remove a creek from your property? Well, you don't. But there is one option, and it's not ideal. Moving into an apartment. That's the best thing you can do. I don't know if there's snakes in apartments or not. That's a terrifying thought. No, I'm talking about netting. So my friend, lots of my friends, they net their veggie patches to stop birds and possums and rabbits getting in there, and often snakes get tangled up in the nets just passing through. Fine enough net can tangle up with their scales or whatever, and they get trapped in there. My neighbor has mentioned that he nets off behind his shed, and every year he'll get 2 or 3 snakes caught in those nets, which die. And this is unfortunate because this is a slow, painful death, basically death by injury and starvation, and they are a protected species. It's actually illegal to kill snakes intentionally, right? I think there might be some clause, don't quote me on this, that if you are threatened or trapped and you have no option, you can legally kill a snake. Now, again, I didn't research that. In other words, in self-defense, but I've heard this, but I'm not sure if that's true, so don't take that with a grain of salt. And of course, if you accidentally run one over or catch one in a net, just don't tell anybody. It's unfortunate, but this is their homeland. They are native to this area, so really I'm the invader, but I'm not fucking going anywhere, so suck shit, snakes. I am netting off my house. I am netting off my dog run because I don't have another $2,000 to fix this little idiot when she goes to attack a snake. There is a downside to the netting situation, however. Aside from the unnecessary killing of a snake, is that snake's not going to necessarily die straight away, and if your dog or your kid, or even if you don't notice something thrashing about in there, they're going to run over, and the snake's trapped. It's not going to be able to flee because it's stuck in the net, and it might have its head free, and it might still bite your dog. Or you might step on it, or you might think it's dead and you go to move it, and it gets you, or you might not even notice it, and you're lifting up your net to open up to get your fruit out of your whatever, off your fruit tree, and there's a fucking snake there. The snakes will flee if they get a chance 99% of the time. If they're trapped in a net, they can't flee. So to summarize, the best thing you can do is tidy up your yard. That's about it. If you have a snake in your house or shed, keep your shed nice and clean too, because they do like to nest in there. If you have a big house or an old house and there's unused rooms with a whole bunch of shit in there, snakes can get in there. It's a great spot. Mice will hang out in there. If mice are hanging out in there, snakes are going to hang out in there. I will do an update one day if there is any serious research and evidence to suggest that there is some sort of spray on the market that gets rid of snakes. Thus far, at least for my research that I've been doing over the last couple of months, on and off, I'm not just like sitting there actively studying, it's inconclusive at best. So tidy up your yard, keep your doors closed, wear long boots and shit when you're out and about, and watch your dogs, take them for a walk in a public place, and yeah. That's about all you can do. Put a couple of nets up if you really want to, but again, I don't condone the killing of native animals, especially ones that are protected. Kangaroo, I'll kill a kangaroo if I was allowed to, but you can still buy a kangaroo. What am I talking about? I've been Jacob. You've been watching Choo. That's the conclusion to this video. You're fucked. You're basically fucked. All right, bye. I love you. See you in the next one.